So you're probably already aware of the 401k and what a great tool it can be when saving for retirement purposes and also saving on taxes. In fact, the 401k has been around for probably almost 50 years. It came out on November 6th, 1978. So as of this month, this filming here in November of 24, that makes it almost a full half century old, right? And in that time, it's gone through a lot of changes. But there have been a couple of really substantial, significant changes that have come out over the last couple of short years that have majorly modified how 401ks work. So if you've seen some news headlines around the Secure Act or the Secure Act 2.0, two of the most substantial pieces of legislation to affect 401ks in really quite a long time, then you're going to want to watch today's video. Hi, I'm John Norberg, and welcome to the Financial Prop Series. So in 2025, there are a number of changes coming down the road for 401ks. And we talked about a little bit more detail on specifically the catch-up contribution in a different video that we'll link here in this video. But what you might not know is that it's more than just the catch-up contribution that's going to be changing. So quick recap, if you're over the age of 50, you can put away $7,500 both this year in 2024 and next year in 2025 as a catch-up contribution. This is in addition to the standard contribution of $23,000 this year and $23,500 next year. So that's one change. The standard contribution is going up by $500 to $23.5K, but the standard contribution remains the same. What changes is that your catch-up contribution is going to be now required to be a Roth contribution if you're over $145,000 in income next year. That can change things if you've been putting everything away in a traditional pre-tax 401k and maxing it out all these years, and then all of a sudden next year rolls along and you weren't expecting it. So just be aware of that. Again, that the catch-up contribution is going to change and is going to become Roth required if you make more than 145k, right? But what is also changing and what you need to be aware of is how that 401k works in terms of the employer match. So I work with a lot of business owners here in my practice, and this affects them both for their employees as well as themselves if they are an employee of the business who also contributes to the 401k and also receives a match. So all my S-Corp owners out there, for instance, pretty much all of you are going to be owners as well as employees of the business, right? So how is it changing? Well, in 2025, what you're going to be seeing is that employer match section, so for most 401ks, it's going to be somewhere between 3 to maybe 5%. And by the way, this affects 403bs, most 457s, et cetera, et cetera. What is going to be changing is the employer match is now far more flexible. So back in the day, it used to be that you'd contribute your piece of money and your employer or business would contribute their piece of the money. So if you put in 3%, they would put in 3%, right? So on an easy math situation, if you make $100,000 and you put in 3%, that's $3,000 of your money. If your employer matches you another 3%, that's another $3,000. Now you've got $6,000 sitting in that 401k. But that $3,000, that employer match portion, is now going to be able to be used for not just an employer match. So obviously it can still do the exact same thing that it had been doing, which is hanging out in your 401k, growing and helping you get ready for retirement. But it can also now be used for an HSA contribution, a health savings account, which if you don't have one of those, it's really worth considering. We did another video about how HSAs can be a great vehicle to help you save, not just for health expenses, but also a number of other things as well. It can also be used for an HRA contribution. What is an HRA? Stands for Health Reimbursement Account. Think about it kind of like an HSA, but with even more flexibility. So one thing that you need to be aware of, if you're an S-Corp, you cannot have an HRA. But it does help in terms of being able to reimburse for pretty much any health-related expense that's out there. So we can talk about HRAs in a future video. But HSAs, HRAs, and then this one is my favorite. It can also now be used, third thing, for student loan repayment. So how does that work? Well, again, it's the employer match portion of the 401k, right? And this is brand new. But starting next year, if your employer has jumped through the necessary hoops, you can now use that match money to go towards student loans. And here's where this gets fun. So again, work with a lot of business owners. Let's say you're an attorney who owns a small practice, or a doctor who's maybe owns a clinic or your own practice, but you still have student loans out there, right? Because it's really, really expensive to get that high quality education that you need to be able to act efficiently and effectively in these fields. You can now, again, if you jump through the right hoops, which actually isn't that hard, we can talk about what that is offline if you're curious. If you jump through those hoops, you can now use that money to deduct it from the business and then put it towards your student loans. So in other words, you're able to get a deduction for paying off your student loans through using the employer match. You can do this as an employee of the business. And again, if you're an S-Corp owner, obviously you are going to be an employee of your business as well as the employer owner. So the whole point that I want you guys to come away with here is that 401ks are changing, mostly for the better, maybe a few things that are a little less flexible, like the catch-up contribution going to Roth. But the ultimate moral of the story is that it has never been more important than it is here heading into 2025 to have a holistic financial plan that includes tax planning for your wealth goals. So if that's something that you've made a resolution for, but haven't taken action on yet, then make this the day. Reach out, whether it's to us or someone else who does this kind of planning. Just get your things together and get a plan in place. We'd love to hear from you, and in the meantime, I'll see you out there.